What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. In the previous video, we did some junkyard stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Now, a couple of videos ago, you guys should have seen the K24 rotating assembly rebuild, which is this right here. And we've been waiting for a couple of parts to do the second half of that video, which is installing the cylinder head onto the short block. Now, we are a couple of days delayed only because I couldn't find the timing chain tensioner in stock anywhere, so I had to order it. And I bought the Clothes one from O'Reilly's a couple of days ago, and they just couldn't find it. But today we got it, and the reason why I got this is because Honda is going to take a little while before I can receive one, and this one is also cheaper, which took supposed to be half a day, but a couple of days, and I got this one. And we also have a brand new top tensioner guide here as well too. I was going to use the old one, and then I told myself, look, everything else is already brand new, might as well just get another one brand new for the guide and just have everything new on the timing side, right? So we have that part now, and we also ordered the LMAs, which showed up yesterday right here. I also went to the junkyard in the previous video to find the pin that I was missing, which is the one with the spring here. So we got a couple of extra so we can assemble the valve train for the cams. A lot of goodies in here. We have the brand new OEM Honda tensioner, we have a rear main seal, we have the T7 timing tensioner cover, we have a brand new timing chain, we already have the brand new oil pump chain and guide for the Type S oil pump. Everything is separated only because I cleaned everything: cams, the rocker rods, we have the rockers itself right here, we have all the caps and all of the bolts all cleaned because this thing was literally dirty brown golden when I tore it apart. Brand new K24 head gasket, 12251 RBB-004, and we also have a brand new OEM TSX water pump right there. I'm super stoked because once this cylinder head is on, we're going to be able to put the rest of the parts onto this engine so we can get it back into the KRX. I'm really stoked to have that car up and going again. It's been a while since I've driven it, and I miss the way that car feels. Now, another part we're going to be installing today is this PLM oil baffle. I got this a few days ago as well too, and the oil pan is not fully bolted on because I was waiting for that. So I'm just going to get right to it, guys. I am going to show you guys every step of the way on how I'm going to put my cylinder head on my short block. I do have my laptop here with a lot of the torque specs and installation process already on my laptop. I am kind of prepared, but I'm ready for it. I hope you guys are too. Let's get to it. Obviously, this video is about the cylinder head onto the short block, right? And we can't put anything else on until we get the cylinder head on the short block. So the cylinder head, I took it off and I sent it off to the machine shop, got a fresh resurface on it. They checked the valves, it's all straight, and I also had them put brand spanking new Honda valve seals on both intake and the exhaust side. So this thing is pretty much ready to go back on, except when they gave me that little bag, I don't know where I put that little bag. The little bag had all the LMAs, which is the reason why I bought them brand new, because like I said, I lost the bag. And it also has one of my dowel pins. So the dowel pin is already on here, one, and I need a second one there. Now, lucky for me, I am a hoarder, and I have dowel pins everywhere in this garage, right? And I did remember I had a couple right here. So dowel pin is very important because it aligns the cylinder head onto the short block, and I'm gonna go ahead and have that on there beforehand. Make sure it's nice and all the way down. Yep, when you're doing a fresh engine rebuild like this, cleanliness is very important. Nomis Industries stressed me about having a lot of shop towels and brake cleaner, because these guys are your friends. So it's very important to make sure that the mating surfaces, cylinder head here, and the block surface is really nice and clean before the head gasket. So if you look, because the cylinder head has been sitting on the yellow microfiber, it kind of picked up on the cylinder head edges. So you can see these little fibers that I have to get off. Now this blue shop towel is gonna leave lint and stuff on here still, but we're gonna use compressed air to blow the rest of it off. So because I'm doing OE rebuild and I bought a lot of OEM parts from Honda, I decided to just use the OE head gasket. Part number here is 12251-RBB-004, and there's so many other companies out there like GE, JE, Blocks, Cometic, so many other companies that make head gasket as well, but I'm just keeping this OE, like I said, because I was already on the website. Might as well just put one in the cart too, right? Now, right out of the package, there's really no dust particles, but I am going to wipe and spray this anyways. Now, head gaskets are directional. There is an up and a down, but the OE head gasket does not really tell you what side is up or which side is down. But typically for the OE head gasket, this white section right here is normally facing down. But once you have the head gasket in your hand, obviously with a little bit of research, you'll find out really quickly that the head gasket only goes on one way, because if you have it upside down, nothing will line up as far as the oil and coolant jacket goes. If you try putting it upside down, you'll also realize that none of the galleries line up. So like I said, this white part typically faces down and it only goes on one way. So I'm gonna go ahead and just set that on there. Everything lines up perfectly. Now we're ready for the cylinder head. K24 head going right on. This should be pretty breezy because we're not using head studs. We're using head bolts, and we're just using the dowels to align the cylinder head on. If you're using head studs, it's going to be a little shimmy, and while you're shimmying it down, you might as well just dance with it, right? But OEM head bolts, cylinder head, almost flush, all the way flush, and we're looking good. For this OE rebuild, I am using the stock K24A2 head bolts. I was going to run ARPs, but I decided I'm not going to boost the car anymore, so I'm going to keep it all motor. These head bolts will work perfectly fine. A lot of people recommend to just get brand new ones, but for what I'm trying to do, not trying to make a ton of power, these will still work perfectly fine. But after torquing these a few times, yeah, I would definitely recommend changing these out. But for now, this will work no problem. It's very important to oil up your head bolts so that way it doesn't give you any issues torquing them down. And I'm gonna go ahead and just drench this a little bit here, slide them on in. I'm gonna go ahead and drive it down, give it that one ugga. The stock head bolt uses a 14mm 12 point. Be sure to use a 12 point and not a 6 point. And the first torque specification we're doing for the head bolts is 29 foot-pounds. So with the engine facing me, I'm gonna start from the center, up, down, and I'm cross over left, up, right, and then over to the right, up, down, and then far ends. After you do the first torque spec of 29 foot-pounds, Honda calls for 2 sets of 90-degree turn on each head bolt. Now, because I'm keeping my torque wrench short, I am torquing the head bolts in this position because this torque wrench is going to hit the spark plug tube if I was to start this way. So I really got to brace this engine stand so it doesn't move when I'm turning it. But I'm going to go ahead and just give it its 90-degree. If you can't figure out what 90-degree is, get yourself like a protractor or something. For me, simply enough, 90 degrees, right? Wow, whew. That took some effort. Head is officially on. Brand new head gasket, rebuilt cylinder head, new valve seals, resurfaced head. This thing should be cherry. I'm gonna go ahead and just oil up the springs and retainer because this engine is super clean of oil, so we're just lubing these ahead of time so they don't go making a bunch of noise right off the rip and get you questioning what you did wrong, right? And I'm out. So next up right now, before the valve train, I have to get the LMAs installed into these ports right here. There are 8 total. And the cool thing about the K series LMAs are the fact that they are springs, unlike the B series and like the single cams, where they're like hydraulic, I guess, and you have to switch it out for LMAs spring style, like Skunk 2 or Blocks or something like that, and get rid of all the clacking noise, so, or the sticking noise, or whatever those noise makes. But K24 LMAs, there's 8 of them. Let's get these installed. The LMA has a flat top and a spring bottom. The spring bottom goes into the cylinder head and the flat part faces up. Give that some oil as well. I'm gonna have to put a valve cover on before I flip this engine upside down. Unless your valve train is completely taken apart like mine, then yeah, sure, you can watch this section of it. But if you guys didn't take yours apart, then you can skip this. The reason why I took mine apart was because, like I said, the internals of the engine was really dookie browned, and I wanted to clean everything, and I did just that with the chem dip that I bought from O'Reilly's. So all of my pieces are separated, all of the pins are taken out, every single spring is taken out, and every single part was cleaned, right? Simple enough. You put it back on the same way you take it off. You got to get all of your rocker holders, I guess. I don't know if that's the right terminology for this, but that is pretty much all of these guys right here. That has pretty much the hole for the shaft that the rockers sit on. These holders are labeled with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 is on the crank side, so kind of like towards cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in between each of these holders has a rocker assembly. Okay, something that I just learned right now. So both ends of these shaft is a different size, right? The thicker side go towards the crank, the thinner side go towards the transmission. The more you know. So guys, rocker assembly. There's 3 pieces to each lobe for the cam. So this flat side right here faces down and the nut side faces up. This obviously allows you to do the valve adjustment, right? So facing up, let me see here. I want to make sure I put this orientation correctly. Okay, so like this. The way I'm holding it on camera right now, so each one of these rockers gets their own pin. Now, take note that there are 3 different sizes of pins. This one right here, I'm gonna call it a 1-inch pin. And then you have a 3/4, which is a little bit shorter than the first pin. And then you have this pin that's hollow, that uses a spring on the inside. Now, the way I'm holding this rocker assembly, the right side rocker, this one, uses the medium-sized pin, which is this guy, right? I'm gonna go ahead and just show you guys this real quick, just like so. The middle rocker, this one, uses the largest pin that goes in just like that. The rocker that I'm holding in my left hand is going to use the hollow pin with the spring. The spring side goes into the rocker assembly, just like that. And all 3 of these sit together like so. It may be easier for you guys to put these pins on when the whole rocker assembly is on the shaft. So I'm gonna go ahead and just slide every single one of these on, put all the pins in, and then we'll pick back up once all of this is ready to go back onto the cylinder head. All right guys, so I have all of the rockers and cam holder and everything installed with the pins and all. Now before I put it onto the cylinder head, it calls in the service manual that you have to put liquid gasket on cam holder number 5 right here on the actual holder itself. But because I know that the holder goes from this edge to this edge, I'm just gonna put RTV on the head section instead of the rocker holder, so that way I don't have to flip-flop the rocker holder to put RTV on. So I'm gonna go ahead and just dab this edge up. This whole entire cam holder is held together by the bolts, so it doesn't separate from each other. And we're using dowel pins here to ensure everything is going to align. I'm gonna go ahead and tap all these dowels down so that way I can take off all these bolts on top. to put the top half of the cam holders down. Go ahead and bring these rockers down evenly so that way the pins don't go flying out. Make sure these journals are cleared of debris. I'm gonna go ahead and just use some oil on top of the rocker rollers, the journals. You can use assembly lube perfectly fine. This will work too. I'm gonna go ahead and get the cams on. This one right here with the big VTC gear is the intake side, and the one without is the exhaust side. Go ahead and get some more oil on the lobes, the camshafts itself. We're going to go ahead and install the top half of the cam holders. This is número 5. Now there are arrows on here and they all have to face the crankshaft. This guide needs to be put on with the cam holders because it sits on the top, and part number for this is 14540-PRB-A01. Also taking note now that I'm looking through this, there is one 12mm bolt that's longer than the rest of them, and that's for the tensioner side because it is taller than the rest. Take note of that. I'm gonna go ahead and get these all driven down from the center out. So all of the 12mm bolts are 16 pounds. And then there's 3 10mm, one right in the middle, and then the 2 on the outside, which is 8.7 pounds. It pays to have a much smaller torque wrench so it'd be easier to really feel 16 pounds. But I don't have that. And Tekton, if you're watching, I'd love me some new torque wrenches. All right guys, so timing side, I've only done this twice. Once in 2019 on Chewy's K24 wagon, and the second time on my brother's K24 CRV, which he drove to work today. I also have the PDF right here on my phone to kind of ensure that I am doing this correctly. And right now we're just setting everything to the markings for TDC. Now, starting on the bottom crank here, we do have this arrow that's on the block, and you have to match it up with the arrow that's on the sprocket right here at the bottom, right? You can see it is lined up to the best of my eyeballs. And then up on the top here, we have the cam gears on TDC as well. So you can see this dot is facing up, as well as this dot here is facing up. Now, the cam and camshaft is locked into place because once you get these arrows facing up, the holes on the back side actually lines up with the cam holder, and you can stick a snug size Allen key. I don't know what size my Allen keys are, but it's snugged in there, and that's pinned down to ensure the cam gear and the cam shaft aren't going to turn. Once they are pinned in, you can see these 2 lines in the middle is lined up perfectly, right? So now that we have these arrows down low lined up, these 2 hyphens lined up with each other, we can get the chain on, and the chain we are using for this rebuild is also an OEM piece, 14401-R40-A01. So this chain, as well as the aftermarket Clotes chain that I've used before, they have a couple of links with different colors on it. The OEM one has gold, while the Clotes has black, as far as I can remember. And the opposite end has one link that's also gold. So this bottom gold link is going to line up with the sprocket, the gearing. There's one teeth down low right here that has a little dimple on it, a little circle dimple. This one right here, that's gonna line up with the single link on the bottom of the chain right here, this bottom one. The 2 top gold links, these are gonna line up with the dots on the cam gear at the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this on now. Right now I have the bottom gold link on the gear with the dots, and then this one right here is 1 tooth off. this gold link is on that dot. The reason why this one is off is because there's no tension on it right now, and every time I would turn it to line it up, it'll just skip back. So according to the service manual, it says to just put the chain on and then throw the guides on. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the guides on now. So this guide right here is an OEM piece, 14530-RZA-A01. These 10mm bolts are to be torqued down 8.7 pounds. I'll do that after I finish tensioning everything. The last tensioner is a Klotz product, and the reason why I got this, like I mentioned earlier, is because I can get this for cheaper and also much earlier than ordering a OEM Honda unit. Part number 9-5573. This one only has one hardware on the top, which is an Allen head, and the bottom is tensioned with the tensioner. This one is to be torqued down at 16 foot-pounds. The last thing to put on here is the tensioner. I bought an OEM unit as well, 14510-PRB-A01. Be sure to leave the pin in here. It is two 10mm bolts. So we have the tensioner on. This was a little tricky because everything kept moving around, right? But we got it done. Bottom link is on the gear with the dot. The gold links on the top, dot in the middle. Same one for the intake side, dot in the middle of the gold links. We have these hyphens still aligned. We have this slightly tensioned only because we still have the pin in place. Now, I want to double check, make sure everything is good. Arrow in the back is good. And if everything checks out, I mean, you do that. Now, what I like to do, as far as I remember from the last time I did this, I get my pry bar. I like to put my pry bar right here and pry the guide out a little bit to let the tensioner click out as much as it could to tension the chain before I close this up. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give it a little tug. Probably one more. Do I want to push it and do one more on that? All right. So we were able to get 3 more clicks out of this, and this seems to be tensioned really nicely. I don't think I want to push to go any further, but I will call around to verify this, or actually look at my manual. It says remove the pin from the auto tensioner, and then it says just to check the chain case oil seal for damage. That's pretty much on the timing cover itself, but it doesn't show anything as far as prying it. But me prying it ensures that we do definitely have the tension. So that's how I do the timing on the K series, and I think we're pretty much done as far as that goes. So we're getting ready to do the valve lash. Now the K series is a little bit different than the B series as far as I know. The B series, you check between the lobe and the rocker, right? K series, you actually check right here at the adjuster screw to the top of the valve stem head. Down here, I'll put a little picture up for you guys. So you got to have the engine on TDC for cylinder 1, which is typically where it's currently sitting after you just done the timing. So this one right here, pistons at the very top. That means all the valves are closed, and we can check the intake and the exhaust. Now the specification for the valve lash on the intake side is between 008 to 010. The exhaust side calls for a 010 to 011. Anywhere between there, you're good, but I'm probably going to shoot for the lowest setting. So on this side, I'm going to shoot for 8, while this side, we're going to shoot for 10. I'm going to show you guys on the first one, and then we'll show you the revolution for the next ones to check. It's always nice to have a valve adjustment tool. If you don't have one, just get a 12mm with a flathead. It's the same thing. So before I even loosen it up, I am going to check to see where the lash is currently sitting. And this is probably a 20 or something. So simple enough. Go ahead and break this nut loose. I'm going to stick the 8 in it now, and then I'm going to tighten down the adjuster and get it to be snug on the 8, and then lock it in. Take it off, check to make sure it's still sitting on the 8, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next size up to see if the next size goes in or not. So 9 barely goes in, but 8 has a nice drag to it. Snug it down on top of the 8. Go ahead and tighten it up. Check the 8 once more. Double check it with the 9. The 9 does not go in, and that one's done. So same thing for the exhaust side. I have a 10 and the 11 out. I am going to set this one to a 10. We are super loose. Snug this down on top of the 10. Got a nice little drag going on right there. Tight it down. Check the 10. 10 goes in. And the 11 does not. On to the last one for this cylinder. Got a very snug 10. Go ahead and tighten it up. Check it again. Snug 10. And the 11 does not go in. So that's pretty much it for the valve lash on cylinder number 1. After you finish the valve lash for cylinder number 1, you have to rotate the crank 180 degrees to get this cam to rotate 90. So I'm going to use this hyphen as the reference. 90 degrees, this should be pointing up. And then the order of operation is cylinder 1, 3, 4, and 2. So after you rotate it 90 degrees, you do cylinder number 3. And then you rotate it another 90 degrees to do cylinder number 4. And then you do the last 90 degrees, which then it should be pointing at the bottom. You do cylinder number 2. So once you finish the valve lash, move on to the next thing. For me, it's the baffle, and then we're going to seal this engine up. So let's button this up and flip this engine over. All right, guys, so hopefully you can see me well. Got you guys way up there on the tripod. So the last thing I'm going to install here before we seal this engine up completely is an oil baffle. Now, this engine rebuild is going to stay all motor. I was going to boost it, but plans change, and we'll talk about the later build that's going to be boosted, that's going to be in my personal fleet. Now, I went to the track last year, took my car out there, didn't put enough oil in it, and I also didn't have a baffled oil pan. Now, granted, it was a junkyard engine, first time on the track, there was a lot to learn, and I paid the price by revving it out too much in third gear and ended up spinning my bearing. What really played a big role was not having enough oil, but also not having enough oil and it sloshing around in the oil pan, and the engine starved at some point and seized the motor up. So I ended up ordering a baffle for the engine. This is a PLM product. PLM is 40 miles from me, and after a couple of reviews between PLM and Blocks, baffle is actually riveted together, where PLM is actually spot welded together. So let me pull it out of the back real quick and show you guys what it looks like. You can see the baffle is spot welded together and not riveted. Riveted works too. I mean, they've always worked, but sometimes, just sometimes, if a rivet is not put on correctly, it falls apart. You don't want a rivet bouncing around in your engine, yet alone this falling apart in the bottom end of the motor. So PLM spot welded together. This bolts onto the girdle and not a weld onto the oil pan. This baffle is meant to be used with the 20 oil pump, not the TSX ginormous balance shaft style oil pump. It's not going to fit. So simple enough, they do provide the install hardware. That is this right here, a couple of studs, washers, spacers, and its own it's not a nylon nut, it's a Norlock type of nut. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull off each one of these bolts off the current windage tray. There are 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 2 sides to the stud. There's a short threaded side and a long threaded side. The short threaded side, I'm gonna put blue Loctite, goes into the block. The long side faces outward for the baffle. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that all put in. So as far as I've seen a couple of the instructions go, these little spacers go on the stud before the baffle. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick that on there now. So the baffle only goes in one way, guys. The oil pickup sits right here, and you pretty much just, I guess, slip it over. Align it. You're gonna have to squeeze the sheet metal a little bit to get it into the stud. And we are on. We are on. All right. PLM does have their own hardware. It comes with a Norlock nut and one of these little spacer looking thing, little locking washer thingamabob. So each one of these studs is going to get 2 of this, and let's button up this Baffle oil pan. You're gonna have to tighten up these nuts by hand because most of it you can't even put a wrench in there because of the baffle being in the way. So I'm just gonna give it a good old snug tug. That's what we're gonna call it, a snug tug. Snug tug. Do the same for all of it. PLM baffle, this one bolts to the windage tray and not the welding to the oil pan. This is very easy for those that don't have access to a welding machine that wants a baffle in their engine, PLM or blocks. So before I put the oil pan on, I am going to put the timing cover on so we can have the entire surface here for one-time run of the liquid gasket, and then we'll secure that and wrap up this video. Got my timing cover bolts right here, all cleaned. So there's these 2 bolts that has this little like spacer in the middle. That's to help align the timing cover. So these go on the bottom of the timing cover right here. A very clear indication to know we have a good seal is squeeze out literally along the entire mating surface. So hopefully this is gonna seal up really nicely and not leak. This is the tensioner cover that a subscriber sent over. This is a T7 design tensioner cover made out of billet. This is really, really nice. Now, I originally wanted the T7 Designs -10 return flange, which puts your turbo return right here, but this engine is not going turbo, so I never bought it. But shout out to the person that sent me this, because this kind of showed up because I don't have one, and it's going to definitely come in clutch. This thing is beautiful, man. It's got its own O-ring, no RTV necessary here, and it is flush mounted with the Allen screws. Wow, look at this. Beautiful. I am super stoked that this engine is finally back together. I bought this K24A2 from a TSX in the junkyard for $180 after core, and it was, I mean, I cleaned it up, it looked good. I rotated the crank, it didn't rotate. Ended up taking it apart, and only then I decided that I'm just gonna fully, entirely rebuild this engine from the bottom up. So if you guys haven't seen the previous video, we built the bottom rotating assembly with new rings, new main bearings, thrust washer, rod bearings, and we did the Type S oil pump with all of the new chain guides and tensioners, all that good jazz. Today you guys saw we did the top half of it, the cylinder head fully rebuilt, all of the new guides and chains, and everything internally in this engine has been completely changed out. I am super pumped to get this thing back into the KRX, get that car up and going again, get it tuned, get it back on the track. A lot of my buddies been hitting me up telling me, hey, track's coming up, you down to run? I'm like, man, I don't got a car, but we are this much closer now to getting the KRX back up on the road. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed putting it together, although it kind of took a little longer than I wanted to because of trying to make it as thorough as possible. So we are done with this K24 engine rebuild. A lot of the stuff that needs to go on the outside of the engine, I'm going to save it for tomorrow, and just really, you know, tear apart the other 20 that came out of this car to take all the parts from that to stick it on here. I want to keep this as light as possible because I still have to get it off the engine stand, and just know the KRX will be running again real soon. So I am going to wrap up the video right here. I already got a lot of my stuff put away already, and I hope you guys enjoyed part 1 bottom end rotating assembly video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well too. If you guys did, be sure to leave a thumbs up, and if you guys want to stick around to see this engine in that car and its first start and its dyno video and back on the track, be sure to hit the subscribe button. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.